So much of this movie is just pandering. This movie, I would also say, like, even though it's pandering, this movie isn't for the fans. It's for the dregs of the fan base. It's for the dregs of the fan base who clap and scream and shit themselves when an obvious Easter egg is shoved in their faces for an extended period of time where it just sits there for like a couple of beats and we're like, what the fuck was just that? That's what this is. That's what this movie is. Hello, and thank you for checking out the video. I just want to let you know that I not only create content on my YouTube channel, Class in the Glass, but I'm also on Twitch, where I review movies, cartoons, and TV shows live, while also playing single-player games and multiplayer games. I also have a Patreon, where subscribers have access to hundreds of video and audio commentaries for films and cartoons, as well as podcasts and videocasts. In the meantime, thank you again for watching, and enjoy the video. We're going to go ahead, and we're going to move on to the next part of my show, and that is my review for Five Nights at Freddy's. No, not the game, the theatrical film, which has been in some sort of production hell for the last several years. I think there were attempts to make it back in the late 2010s, 2017s to be more specific. But after going through a whole series of filmmakers, some recognizable filmmakers, it's finally made. It's finally in theaters right now. Chat had an enormous weekend, Chad. It's one of the most commercially successful films this year right now. Who would have thought, chat? I mean, I knew this series was popular, but I guess I had no idea. But then started to hear all sorts of things about the movie. Started to hear from all the critics, people that even I know, friends of mine who watched this film, and they had a lot to say about it, a lot of negative things to say about it. But then there's this whole huge swath of people that are saying that it's amazing and it's one of the greatest horror films ever made. I'm like, okay, what's going on? So I went ahead and I saw this film. Chat. I did not go to the theater to see it. I watched it online via the streaming service Peacock. First time ever getting Peacock, chat, but I have it. Also record an audio commentary. Little special thing that I did. Figured that'd be kind of fun. They'll be going up later this week, so don't you worry about that. Just got to do some edits for that one. But for those that don't know, this is, of course, based on the popular video game franchise of the same name, in Five Nights at Freddy's. Follows a sad and troubled dad and security guard who accepts a night job at an abandoned family entertainment center arcade, where the animatronic mascots come to life and occasionally murder people. Before getting into this review, I want to start with an apology. A few years ago, I said some harsh things. I used some strong words, some strong language, and was very dismissive towards the film Willy's Wonderland, which starred Nicolas Cage, and has a very similar premise to Five Nights at Freddy's. Although that movie is still bad, still very bad, it is a fucking masterpiece compared to this incompetent, boring slog of a fucking film. Now, I've seen some bad movies this year. Such movies like The Exorcist Believer, The Flash. I can go on and on, but I can at least acknowledge parts of those movies that had good moments, or at least good ideas that suffered from poor execution, incredibly poor execution. I cannot do that with Five Nights at Freddy's. It's the worst type of horror film, or film adaptation, or just cinematic experience that one can create. And there's a whole host of reasons as to why that is. Now, listen, at the top, I'll say I have never played Five Nights at Freddy's, but I've been aware of the games, of the series for a very long time, and I've seen people play the game. Like, oh, that's kind of fun, And I certainly recognize its popularity. It's definitely in the pop culture zeitgeist. It was extraordinarily, and probably still is extraordinarily popular on Twitch, and certainly most likely right now because of the commercial success of the film right? But here's the thing. After watching this film, I fail to understand how the games were ever popular. Because this movie, it might be one of the worst theatrically released horror films created in the 21st century. At least the ones that I've seen. And I feel like I'm not being hyperbolic saying that. This is a 2-hour film. It's nearly 2 hours. It's like an hour and like 50 minutes, 55 minutes, something like that. And, this is a 2-hour film that needs at least 90 minutes cut out of it. Because you have 90 minutes of footage where nothing fucking happens. Nothing happens. And then the other 30 minutes is a barely competent short fan film that would be more at home on YouTube than certainly in a theater or on TV or even on a streaming service. I can kind of respect the fact that they tried to expand the characters, like for the example of Josh Hutcherson's character, he's the security guard that watches everything, watches Five Nights at Freddy's, yada, yada, yada. But you need to give him something to do in the movie. You need to give him something to do. You got to have him, have acts, or do some sort of action for at least the majority of the film. You don't just wait till at the very, very end, till he's finally doing something. But what they do is, they just give him dull, insipid conversations with other people that go nowhere, or just these. And for the life of me, listen, we get a lot of dream sequences in movies. Some of them can be good, a lot of them can be bad, most definitely. But there are so many of these overly long dream sequences in this film that go absolutely nowhere, and are just used to occasionally vomit exposition and lore, or set up some lame reveal or some lame twist. So it's like, wait, how did that happen based on what we saw in this dream? But then it's coming out, what? That's what so much of this movie is. It's just me going, what is happening? What's the point of all this? None of the characters in this movie are fun or likable or interesting. Those who are recognizable, those who are not. Like Matthew Lillard's in this film. I'm a huge Matthew Lillard fan. Of course, Scream is like one of my, speaking of horror films, Scream is like one of my favorite horror films of all time. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's probably in my top 20, and he's excellent in that film, obviously. And he's in this movie, and what they get him to do is not all that, in my mind, all that interesting or fun, especially when he's played one of the best slashers of all time, or at least part of the duo. Obviously you have Skeet Ulrich and Scream. It's like, oh, you're gonna get this guy to be doing some fun stuff. It's like, nope. These characters, they just kind of exist as props. They're not even characters to me, really. They are props used to make reference to something from the game, or just say an awkward line or a catchphrase that alludes to something from those video game titles. It's lazy and insulting pandering. So much of this movie is just pandering. This movie, I would also say, even though it's pandering, this movie isn't for the fans. It's for the dregs of the fan base. It's for the dregs of the fan base who clap and scream and shit themselves when an obvious Easter egg is shoved in their faces for an extended period of time, where it just sits there for a couple of beats, and we're like, what the fuck was just that? That's what this is. That's what this movie is. And the other thing is, the animatronics barely do anything for most of the film. And when they do, it's fucking lame. They look like shit. What they do is shit. I mean, they are shit. There's no blood or gore, which, again, isn't necessary for a horror film. Some of the greatest horror movies of all time don't have that. But in this case, it would have helped. It would have helped sell this film a little bit better. It's like, hey, we're going to get a fun, gory, over-the-top, killer animatronic, funhouse movie. Let's fucking go. That sounds cool. I'm game for that. There's plenty of films like that out there that I'm like, yeah, it's good, some good stuff. They don't have that. It's not in this movie. It feels like So much of this movie feels like it was just made by a committee of people who dictated it be a film made for everyone. You know, it's one of those types of films. Like, it's made for everyone. Well, we don't want to alienate these people. We don't want to alienate those people. It's like, just, you know, kind of just fill it with, you know, the fucking stupid references from the game that come out of nowhere and, you know, for no, you know, discernible reason. And, you know, and make sure it has, like, no personality so it doesn't fucking offend anyone or does anything interesting. And you're just left with this boring, listless, animatronic husk of a movie. That's what it is. Like, I'm going throughout the film, like everything that they attempt to introduce, like it feels like there's an attempt to do something with Josh Hutcherson's character, of like where he's a sad dad and he has this kid and he's trying to take care of the kid, but he's sad. And I was like, oh, I feel for him. But then you don't do really anything with that. And you just have him go to this. I know the concept of the game is Five Nights at Freddy's. It takes time before it builds up to the scares. I understand. Like, the first night's fine. The second night's okay. It's like, but that doesn't make for an interesting fucking film. All right? Where literally nothing happens. And it's like, well, you know what? Since nothing happens on the first, the second, or whatever night, the third night, let's just put in a stupid dream sequence that expands the lore that I guess has come out of the game since then. It's like, that does just because, you know, the game does that doesn't mean that the adaptation should. All right? Maybe you can have it where maybe we kind of like cut. How about you get it? That's what this movie also desperately needs. It needs a fucking editor. It needs an editor. It's like, hey, like, yeah, nothing happens the second. There's so many things you could do. Like I think, like, you know what? I was thinking of this movie and I was watching this movie. I thought of, like, you know, Edgar Wright and like how his movies are edited. Certainly when it comes to the Cornetto films, or more specifically like Shaun of the Dead and like Hot Fuzz. And you know how fucking fast and cool the editing is in that? How we just transition like what would normally take a character, for example, in real life, like 30 minutes, an hour, a day to do. He does these super cool just cuts, and it makes it entertaining and funny. It's like then we can get through those first 2-3 days, like boom, 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 and it's just like, oh, okay. Right, and then there'll be maybe something creepy suddenly, and then but then the final 2 nights is like, okay, here we go. Here, because the fourth and the fifth night are the nights that are fun. But they don't do that. They fucking force you to go through those boring ass nights when we play the game, right? But in this case, they just shoved in these shitty dream sequences and these characters that are either, again, are unlikable, or they have no personality, or they're just there to deliver exposition or lore, because that's what this, apparently everyone's so jazzed about this movie, is that it has so much lore in it. And I'm like, I don't care. I have no issue with lore, but you got to make that lore interesting. All right, instead of just reading off, you're reading off a fucking Wikipedia page. All right, or it's like you're watching a YouTube video and you literally just copy everything the YouTuber said and you're just vomiting at me. It's like, that doesn't make a good movie. All right, and that's what they did. That's what they've done, and so that's why I'm flummoxed. I don't understand why this movie has received so much adulation from audiences. I mean, and I guess I just underestimated the fan base, because this is going to be one of the most commercially successful films this year. One of the most commercially successful horror films this year. And listen, these last couple years, shit, we've gotten some stinkers for horror movies, no doubt about that. But we've gotten a lot of good horror movies these last couple years. I mean, certainly last year I had like 3 horror films on my best of list, and even a number of honorable mentions. You know, like Barbarian I thought was great, and X I thought was great, and Pearl was great, right? And then most recently, I mean, like Megan was so much fun, and I really like Scream 6 and most recently, like, Talk to Me. It's like, oh, these are really good horror movies. This is nice, right? And yeah, we get some stinkers like Exorcist, of course. But this one, this movie's gonna be the most successful out of all those? Like, really? I don't get it. And it kind of made me go a little crazy trying to put it together and think about it. Because we live in a time now when it comes to the video game adaptations. It's not just a horror film, it's also a video game adaptation. You know, where video game fans have been asking for better stuff for a long time. And I think now we're starting to get that. We're finally starting to get that. Even stuff which maybe I'm not over the moon about, but it's like, oh, these are fun. These are good movies. Like, you know, the Sonic films, right? Or even like, you know, some stuff which I think is like legitimately like this is just amazing piece of content, like Castlevania or Cyberpunk Edge Runners or Arcane, which to me is just the king of the video game adaptations. Like there it is. Look what they did. It's like the level of skill and craftsmanship and love that's shining through. It's amazing. And then we have something like this, which is just, in my opinion, a pile of fucking shit, which is Five Nights at Freddy's, and people are celebrating this. I'm like, why? Because they held the camera on like a thing from the game for like an overly long amount of time for an extended several beats, and it made you go, that's the thing from the game. That's what we're selling for? No, I thought we had moved past this. I thought we had moved past this as fans of video games and fans of horror. It's like, no, we expect better, but apparently fucking not. Because so many people are just, you know, getting off to this movie. And listen, if you're a fan of the movie, then you're a fan of the movie. Okay, fair. You know, I'm not, you like what you like, dislike what you dislike, as I always say, but I'm just like, but don't, but you gotta have some consistency. You gotta have some sense of consistency with your criticism then. Okay, that's my whole thing. It's like, okay, well, don't then criticize like what other movie, like they made a reference and it's probably far more subtle and smarter, and go like, I don't like the reference. Like, well, you fucking, you know, lost your goddamn mind, shat your pants when they showed the whatever thing from Five Nights at Freddy's, whatever the infinite amount of Easter eggs they shoved down my throat while watching this film. You know, I don't get it. I really don't get it, and I'm very scared. Because not of the movie itself, obviously, but it's gonna be a franchise now. There's no doubt about it. You know, they made so much money off of this film. It's cheap as hell. It made $130 million worldwide. It killed the box office. Now it could be where it's like, yeah, the first one's successful, but maybe the sequel comes out and it tanks. But I don't know. I think this is gonna continue to make money. It's gonna be a huge hit this year. It's gonna make hundreds, not just like $100 million. It's gonna make hundreds of $1 million now. And it has me worried because then you're gonna get studios doing their own knockoffs, which I guess there have been already knockoffs like Willy's Wonderland, which again I don't think is a good movie at all. I really don't like that film, but it's better than this, much better than this. And that has me concerned because you're gonna get all these knockoffs. We're gonna start to see like a lot of lazy horror films now. They'll be like, hey, just fucking include references, or even worse, they'll start to adapt other horror games theatrically. And it'll be just like Five Nights at Freddy's, where it says, hey, just throw in this fucking reference. Who gives a shit? You know, as long as it makes them people clap when they see the thing, then we're good. And then put any nonsensical bullshit you possibly can in this movie. I'm concerned about that because I figure like, hey, we're in a much better place than we were, you know, however many years ago when it came to video game adaptations, because we're actually getting good stuff now. And so I'm really concerned about that. That's like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to revert. And I feel like this movie just walked us 10 steps back, you know, when it comes to those adaptations. Certainly for video games and horror video games, and just also for the horror genre, because I think the horror genre is like, we're in a really good place right now. Like, we're getting a variety of horror films. It's not, I mean, both in terms of big franchise, and yes, there's stinkers, of course there are, but in terms of big franchise, in terms of like new types of horror movies, and also in terms of like indie stuff, it's like, wow, we're in a really nice period for horror, and I think that's really cool. And I don't want Five Nights at Freddy's to fuck it up, but that fucking bear and all those other animatronics and everyone else that's part of this movie might, and that has me concerned. Yeah, I despise it. I despise this movie. I think it is. And listen, I've seen some bad movies this year. I've done some bad movie reviews. You know, like Expendables 4 is utter trash. I mean, you know, Exorcist was bad. The Flash is bad. You know, I could go down a whole list. But this is a particular type. You people. I think, man, it's close. It's like those are kind of neck and neck for me. I have to, this is fresh. This stings. The sting of this movie is still fresh. The wound this movie left on me is still fresh. So maybe this is worse than You People. Just because, like, You People, the thing with You People is, this is an aside, it's like, okay, that's a bad comedy. There's always bad comedies, you know, with, you know, even recognizable stars. It's like, okay, that's a drop in the fucking bucket, right? It's still awful for various reasons. And Kenya Barris, I think, is incompetent as a writer, as a filmmaker, you know, but I think people are catching on to that now, which is nice. So it's like, okay, that's kind of like, you know, but this can affect so many things. That has me worried. It's not only is it an awful film, but it can have a profound effect on so many other things, and that has me worried. That has me very worried because I feel like that's what they're gonna do. So yeah, no, this Five Nights at Freddy's is complete trash, and it is a perfect example of lazy filmmaking, terrible pandering, and just an example of a bad horror film and a bad video game adaptation. And I'm very confused as to why this is so successful, at least commercially and with the fan base. Because I feel like, you know, as video game fans, we hold pretty high standards when it comes to adaptations. I feel like we've always done that, you know, and so I'm just so weirded out by the FNAF fan base, and I don't mean to make fun of those people, but I was just like, don't you want more? Don't you want something better other than just to see the thing that you saw from the game? I just don't get it. I'm really confused by that because I feel like other fans from other video games have like, you know, people weren't happy about the Uncharted movie, okay? It's like people were like, this fucking sucks. Like Uncharted fans are like, this movie sucks. Like, yeah, there are a few outliers. They're like, I like that, you know, whatever. Or they like the Uncharted movie, whatever. It's like the video game. But like majority didn't, and so I'm kind of confused. It's so weird to me. But yeah, I despise this movie. It's definitely certainly one of the worst this year. I have to go back and feel like if You People's worse. I don't know. This is certainly awful, and I do think it's one of the worst video game adaptations of all time. I think it's one of the worst horror films of the 21st century. It's just trash, and part of me is like, I hate that I watched it, but I'm glad I watched it because finally I can understand, like, all right, what's everyone talking about? I'm like, now I know. Now I have the knowledge and going, oh, you know. But wow, I didn't expect it to be this bad, but it is. It absolutely is, and I'm scared for the future. I'm scared for the future of the horror genre and of the video game and future video game adaptations because I don't want to regress. I don't want to regress, but I feel like that might happen. That's my thoughts on Five Nights at Freddy's, chat. The movie, the very commercially successful film, which will spawn probably a very commercially successful franchise. But that's just my thoughts on the movie. What about you guys? What about you? For those of you who are fans, may not be fans of Five Nights at Freddy's, the games, like, what do you think of the movie? Have you seen it? A lot of people did. Do you care to see it now? I mean, I don't like to discourage people from seeing things. I mean, see it if you want to. Don't see it if you don't want to. That's totally fine. I don't think you need to. but what about you guys? Let me know. I hope everyone enjoyed the video, and I want to take the time to tell you about my Patreon, Class in the Glass, which offers hundreds of film commentaries and video reactions to numerous movies, TV shows, and cartoons. If you're a fan of shows like Batman the Animated Series and Avatar: The Last Airbender, or films like Aliens and Raiders of the Lost Ark, my Patreon is the platform for you. Currently, I'm doing a subathon to reach 75 subs on the platform. If we hit 75 subs, we'll be able to start voting on the next edited YouTube reaction, which will include actual clips and scenes from the movies and shows I comment over. Choose from such films as Fire and Ice, Masters of the Universe, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, or Spawn. Subscribing at any tier level is appreciated, and feel free to give feedback at any time. Thank you again for watching the video, and see you next time.